everyone, it's Steph. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the books I've read in the month of September, and I've read 21 books overall. I surprisingly read only 4 audiobooks. I ended up reading 5 physical books, which is a lot for me because typically I don't read a lot in person. I typically have been reading a lot on my iPad, which was the greatest number of books that I read this month, 19 ebooks. So the bulk of the books that I read for the month of September were ebooks, and there's a good reason for that, and I will tell you why. This month I was accepted as a member of NetGalley, which is a free website that allows you to read advanced reader copies of authors' books that have not yet been published. So I'm going to, whenever I talk about a NetGalley book, I'm going to put the date on the screen so you can see when this book is ready to be published. So let's talk about my favorite books for the month of September. We basically have one contemporary romance and the rest are all historical romances, and it's great. And it was like such a happy place for me to like settle into for the beginning of the month, and I'm excited to talk to you about them. I have one contemporary romance, so I'll just kick off the video with that one. This is Waiting for Tom Hanks. This is the only one I have a physical copy of at the moment from the library. And I really enjoyed reading this like lighthearted and fun romance story. It was so nostalgic for 90s rom-coms. If you like Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, that just while you were sleeping, those kinds of movies, just atmospheres, then this definitely gives you all those vibes. Where we have a girl named Annie who basically grew up with rom-coms, and after her mom died, that was something that stuck with her, something she shared with her mom, and something she wanted to emulate in her own life. And then she struggles to find a man who can compare to the Tom Hanks persona in his rom-coms. This actually had surprisingly more depth than I expected to it. It had more depth, and it just was really sweet. It was a great lighthearted read that just put my romance-loving heart in a happy place. So it was great. Next, I read Otherwise Engaged by Joanna Barker. You've heard me mention this author on my channel before. She's a new book coming out in October 2020, and she is so great at just creating characters that you care about and stories that you feel invested in from very early on. I did not realize that this was kind of a sequel to The Couple from The Truth About Miss Ashbourne, and it didn't really matter whether or not you'd read that one before, but I just like knowing when we're reading sibling stories because I like connecting those dots for myself. Okay, so William Rowley is the protagonist of The Truth About Miss Ashbourne. The thing I like about Joanna's books is that they are exclusively from the female perspective. Now sometimes I like reading the dual perspective of the guy and the girl and going back and forth in a romance. We get a more limited view when we only see the woman's view, but then we also get to see from a historical point of view what it was like for a woman to go about in the world of, you know, Regency era or whatever era, and the limitations that society placed on her as a woman at that time. Very, very interesting, and just something like I just am all about learning, and gives me more appreciation that I was born in this time period. Thank you, Lord. So you definitely don't need any prior knowledge to read this book, but it was nice to kind of connect the dots for me personally. This is William's younger sister. So this was an interesting romance book because typically in a romance book you have guy meets girl, girl meets guy, and then they have some sort of conflict and then the resolution where they end up together at the end of the book. This was different. This starts off with her reading a secret love note from her secret fiance. You're like, well wait, did I just get robbed of this opportunity to experience this love story? Just wait. So she ends up living in her family's property, and she's walking about the estate, and she ends up hearing a little girl screaming, and she runs to the lake nearby. She goes and saves her, and then she finds a man behind her who's all grumpy, and she's like, okay, you're welcome for saving this girl's life. And she comes to find out that this little girl is his stepsister, and he is a naval officer who is home, I believe, because his stepmother passed away. So he's in charge of caring for this girl and figuring out what to do next. So he has rented the estate next to hers, which has been empty for years, and then things happen. It's an excellent romance. I really enjoyed it, and definitely recommend this book if you're interested in historical Regency romance. From the first sentence, the story had my attention. Of the many things that could be depended upon to make a young lady swoon, a love letter certainly made the list. Love it! And it totally made me think of Persuasion right off the bat. Love letter, Persuasion, they go together. It's amazing. This was my first NetGalley book. Thank you, NetGalley, for giving me a free copy of this book, and definitely had to talk about it because it was awesome. Another NetGalley one that I loved was Forget Me Not by Sarah Eden. So we all know that I am in love with all things historical romance. I love a lot of Sarah Eden's books, and especially her Jonquil Brothers series. This is a prequel, how their parents got together. And it was interesting, it's the first book by this author from the Georgian era, so Mad King George is referenced and all that. And of course all I'm thinking about is Jonathan Groff and his success of spitting from the Hamilton movie, but it's all fine. He's amazingly talented, so we can overlook the spitting. This book just, gets you in the feels, deals with issues like abandonment. I also find it interesting that even though this is a fictional story, this happened a lot where we had people who were born into large families ended up losing a lot of their siblings. So I think they each had like 2 or 3 siblings, and all of them, for one reason or another, illness, the war, ended up passing away and not surviving into adulthood. So these 2 families have made a pact. They would like to form an alliance via marriage, and what happens is these 2 are forced into an arranged marriage without their knowledge, and then all the problems that ensue. They were friends as children, try to make the best out of a sticky situation, and then as all the other Jonquils, men have trouble with their ladies, trouble expressing their feelings, and just struggle with being good at romance in general, which I just love reading about. We get to see how their father messes up in his own marriage and his romance, so he calls on his friends, who are called the Gents. These are buddies of his from Cambridge, Oxford, one of something school, British school somewhere. Lucas's friends, all these really great personalities, and come to help Lucas in his early days of his marriage. It's really funny. Personalities are really great, supportive friendships, and it really is sweet to see this story come to fruition. I was not expecting this story. I didn't feel like I needed this story from the author in order to increase my enjoyment of the series, but I am glad that it exists, and I'm excited to see these other friends of Lucas's stories as we go along with this series. So I'm eager to see where that goes next. Thank you, NetGalley, for a free copy of this book. More books. Oh my gosh, let me tell you. A Portrait of Loyalty is the conclusion to the Codebreaker series by Rosanna M. White. I think I talked about her second book that came out in, I want to say, February 2020, and this just did not disappoint. It was so good. So good. So this is about Lily, who is the daughter of an admiral in the British Army, and this is taking place during World War I or World War II? World War I. World War I, because we have the Bolsheviks going on, and I'll get to that in a minute. We have Lily, who is working in the old Admiralty building. Admiralty, I can't say that word. She helps the British government to basically hand-done photoshopping to either help support the British cause by supporting British troops, or manipulating images to send false information to their opponents in the war to help bring a speedier end to the war. So it's interesting to see what that process is like. As someone who enjoys photography recreationally, I really enjoyed just seeing the world through her eyes and her perspective, and I also really enjoyed this male protagonist whose name is Zivan, I believe is how we say his name. He is from Russia. He's escaped when the Bolsheviks took over. He was used to working in the Russian government. He's very intelligent, speaks multiple languages, and is very good at breaking codes. So he goes to England, wants to offer his services to the British government in the hopes that he can bring World War I to an end at a speedy rate so that they can help bring the Bolshevik Revolution to an end, restore Russia to what it previously was. So it's just really interesting. We deal with a lot of societal things happening in England as well as Russia. It's really good. I loved it. So glad that I read it. Thank you, Rosanna White, for making such a good book. And thank you, NetGalley, for giving me a free copy. I just was like so excited when that was available and I could get that. Forget Me Not and A Portrait of Loyalty both came out at the beginning of September, so definitely check that out if you are interested. Highly recommend. Another one that just came out recently, did I get this from NetGalley? I can't remember. Is called A Proper Charade. This is Esther Hatch, this Regency romance that just had like a unique and original twist to it, which I really liked. So we have this girl named Patience, and she's constantly like going against the grain of her name, and basically just kind of begrudges the fact that her brother, because he is older and a man and an estate holder, can boss his sister around. Her brother is a veteran from the war, and he's always talked very highly of his captain, and she just wants to kind of be independent and prove that she can do more than just sitting and sewing or doing basic woman things like being dainty all the time. So she just basically wants to prove that she can work her month, and then she wants a letter of recommendation from this general that she can take back to her brother and be like, look, here's what I can do. I'm independent. She goes to this general's home. She ends up getting hired and then finds out that the general is not there. He's away. And of course, on her first day there, she runs into the general's son. They start talking, and then what ends up happening is he's trying to woo a lady in society. So he gets the idea to use her services, even though she's a maid, have her attend a few society events with him so that he can seem like he has another option besides his potential love interest who he's having challenges with. These two end up trying to help one another. He's helping her with her job and being patient with her and kind of guiding her through this process that she's a terrible maid. Shocking. He ends up noticing how good she is in society at her poise and her dancing, and she looks so graceful. She almost looks like a lady. I wonder why. All these fun things occur, and words are not happening today. It's a struggle. Let me try this again. It's fun to see these two fall for each other, even though he doesn't totally know her true identity. It's interesting to see how these two fumble on the way into a romance and then how to find a solution for that romance. So definitely recommend. I so enjoyed reading this. It's one of those that I stayed up way too late reading because I just couldn't put it down. Do I regret it? No, it's fine. Just start reading it earlier than I did. Sometimes I start books intending to read a few chapters before bed, and then I read like half of the book or the whole book. Don't do that on a school night. A Captain for Caroline Graves by Julie Wright. This is the first historical book that she's written. And this is an interesting premise too, where we have this young woman named Caroline. She's had a few seasons and the men kind of turn their nose up at her once they realize that behind her pretty face is a brain. They don't really like that because she doesn't have any filter and she says what she thinks. She keeps it real. And a lot of guys don't like it when she keeps it real in Regency era society. So what her mother does basically is says, look, we need you to be married financially in order for you to have food on the table and survive. I cannot fund you that because I don't have the money to do so. So I have arranged with a societal matron. Her son is working over in India. I need you to take this ship and go over and meet him and give him a chance. What? So I know this wasn't totally uncommon at the time. It talks a little bit in the author's notes at the end of the book about how this would occur, where women who couldn't marry in British society would travel on these ships to India in order to meet and find potential husbands and marry and have a safe living situation. So what ends up happening is Caroline is on the ship and she's stuck with these people for 3 months. There are issues because a lot of them are women and a lot of them are competing for the two men who are on board's attention. So rivalry happens, as well as dealing with a very stubborn captain who just thinks all the women on the ship are either delusional or being taken advantage of, and they don't know what they're getting themselves into over in India, and the men aren't gentlemen there. So we have this whole banter that goes back and forth. He starts to recognize very quickly how very intelligent Caroline is. She starts to realize that he has a heart underneath his rough exterior. We get to see how these two slowly start to fall for each other, and then what happens when they get to India. I really enjoyed this. This comes out in the beginning of 2021. Definitely, if you are interested in this story, definitely check it out. Last but not least, we have another boat story. So the last story that I read for the month of September, my favorite, which is why I saved it to the end, is so good, is called Waiting for... No, it's not what it's called. It's called Georgana's Secret. And when I first saw it, it really bothered me that it wasn't Georgiana, it's just Georgana. But apparently that's a less common derivative of the name Georgiana. So I digress. Georgana is basically living in a very toxic situation after her mother dies. Her father is a naval captain, and in order to allow Georgana to escape the abusive home situation that she's in, her father takes her away and hides her identity on his ship. Her identity becomes the captain's boy. Everyone thinks because she's small and thin that she's like a 12-year-old boy. She cuts her hair short and she lives in her father's cabin as a cabin boy, the captain's first, little running boy kind of thing, and does errands on the ship for her father. This allows her father to keep her safe, but it also poses risks the longer that she's on the ship. None of the men on the ship have any idea that she's a girl, but if they were to find out, not only could it be a risk to her reputation, but it also could be a risk to his professional reputation and could cause him to lose his respectability in the Navy. You can see as the book goes on that it's taking his toll on him, mentally as well as physically, and it's just completely draining for him to maintain this secret. At the start of the story, we also have a new lieutenant who is arriving to the ship. He is doing very well in his career, and he soon realizes that something is kind of off about Georgiana? Ghana? I don't know how to say, but she goes by George. Her father calls her George. She's small. She's getting picked on by the other boys, the other teenage boys who are pushing her around because she's smaller and weaker. This lieutenant starts to interfere. He teaches her how to defend herself physically, how to just outmaneuver punches or how to punch back, and how to basically not be aggressive but just stand up for herself. And then things develop. And what I really liked about this is it wasn't a one-sided story, one-faceted story at all. Once you thought like, okay, this is going to be the theme for the book, then we added something new. There's really a lot of different things happening in this story. It was a really interesting read. There was a lot to digest. It wasn't like a heavy story. It just felt like this author packed so much information and so much character development and so much history into this book that I really loved it. It's the first book I ever read by this author, and I can't wait to read more because she's so talented in what she does. So this book comes out in early 2021. Highly, highly recommend if you are even interested remotely in this book. Definitely check it out. Reminds me a little bit of 12th Night with the her dressing up as a boy kind of thing, but beyond that, it doesn't really resemble 12th Night too much. I was really glad to find some books that I enjoyed, but then I was also like super happy to find multiple books I just loved and couldn't put down and had to like see them through, and just a lot of really great authors with really great books. So definitely check these out if you're interested. I also did a reread of The Lady and the Highwayman by Sarah Eden because she has another book coming out as a follow-up to this in November of 2020. The reason I reread this was not because I couldn't remember the main characters, but I couldn't remember the side characters, and it bothered me personally that I can't read a sequel not remembering anything about those characters' history. Does it make sense? So upon rereading it, I was like, oh yeah. We'll be focusing on the music teacher and then another Penny Dreadful author. So we're going to see, we kind of see some sparks and some attraction in the end of the first book. So I'm interested to see where this goes. It's called The Gentleman and the Thief, and I'm not really sure what's happening there, but I'm interested to see where this goes. So that was my wrap up for the month of September. I think I'm going to wrap up this video with just a thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed watching. Let me know about your favorite books in the month of September, and if you've read any of these books. I hope you find some books that just like make you happy and bring some sunshine into life, because life is crazy, and let's find something good to celebrate, even if it's just for a small moment. We need something positive. So here I am to bring you some sunshine to your day. That sounds a little conceited. But I hope you like this video, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.